My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
That's a good one.
This is a different version from that one, but the same thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. The chimes of time ring out the news. Another day is through. Someone slipped and fell. Was that someone you? You may have longed for added strength, your courage to renew. Do not be disheartened, for I bring hope to you. It is no secret what God can do. What is done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. There is no night, for in His light you'll never walk alone. Always feel at home wherever you may roam. There is no power can conquer you while God is on your side. Just take Him at His promise. Don't run away and hide. It is no secret what God can do. What is done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. It is no secret what God can do.
Meant to mention during our prayer time that about our Myers Mallory offering was $790. So that's a good offering. Our goal is 1,000, and so I know there were a couple that weren't prepared to be able to give. So you can give today, and you can also give next week, next Sunday, and then we'll be sending a check for our Myers Mallory offering. So thank you for giving to our offering this time. So as we look this morning, Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37, the beginning of my favorite account in Genesis. There's a lot in there that I like, but Joseph's story has to be my favorite, I guess. There are a lot of similarities about Joseph. There's a lot of to Jesus, and maybe one of these days I'll be able to tie that in. But this morning I wanted to be able to look at this from a different angle. This morning, as we look at this is kind of the beginning of the story about Joseph. And although this does look like a dysfunctional family, we don't own that right. I know there's a lot of dysfunctional families in the world today. There's my family at some point has been completely dysfunctional, and maybe yours has too. I don't know, but there's ways to be able to help with this. And I want us to be able to look this morning at how this kind of started falling apart with Joseph and with Jacob this morning. You're going to be reading about this week. This family. I know you've discussed during Sunday school about Abraham and about Isaac, and so we're looking at this week, this coming week, this story about Jacob, and it's such a good story. But this morning, let's look at Genesis chapter 37. How we're going to do this, it's a little different this morning. I want to be able to cover the whole chapter. So I want us to be able to lay just kind of some groundwork here. And that's going to come in point number 1, which is the disconnected father, that we'll look at in Genesis chapter 37, 1 through 4. We're going to look at the disconnected father. Verse 1 says, "Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. And his father was Isaac." So you remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then verse 2 says, "These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a varicolored tunic. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms." So in looking at this, verse 1, it starts to tell us a little bit about Jacob and where they're living. They're in the land of Canaan, but they're living there, but they don't own it. They don't possess it yet. It's kind of that, they're just there, and they haven't taken over anything yet, which now by maybe studying the Bible. But we're going through the book of Genesis on Wednesday nights, and now that they take over the land of Canaan in the book of Genesis and thereafter Exodus, and thereafter. But so here they're basically just living here now, and we start to look at this. We see Joseph's job. We see that he's pasturing the flock, and he's out there with his other brothers. I'm not going to go through the list of his other brothers, but one thing I do want to call attention to you this morning. We're going to talk about this a little bit, but Jacob had 12 sons, and Reuben was the oldest. If you know this, Reuben was the oldest. You remember he was married to Leah in this weird way that happened with his uncle, and then and his uncle gave him one of his daughters to marry, and it wound up being the wrong daughter that he spent all that time working for. If you remember that story, and then he winds up marrying both. He winds up having both Rachel and Leah as wives, but Leah was able to bear children, and so those are his first children that Jacob has. And Reuben being the first, one of the things here, this is, in looking at this, you look back So he's the youngster. He's the youngest, and Joseph is Rachel's first son. Now Rachel was not able to have children until later in life, but she wound up having two. But Joseph was the first. Does anybody remember? In looking at this, does anybody remember if Jacob loved one of his wives more than the other? He loved Rachel more, didn't he? Just kind of keep that in mind. Just put that up in there, Connie, on the side, and we're going to be coming back to that in just a minute. But Jacob's parenting mistake we see in verse 3. How is this a parenting mistake? Well, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons. Is that a parenting mistake? So, somebody, you parent, y'all help me out. Is that a parenting mistake? It is, isn't it? It says that Jacob, or Israel, they're calling, his name is Israel now. His name changes from Jacob to Israel in the chapter previously, but it says that now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons. Because, not only even says that, it just says because, and so it gives a reason for it. It says because he was the son of his old age. And I would venture to say it's because he was also the son of who? Rachel. So he loved him because he was born in his old age, but he's also his favorite wife. So yeah, back then this was kind of a common accepted thing to have multiple wives. Jacob had wives. He had 4 wives that we know of anyway, and these were Leah, Rachel, and Bilhah and Zilpah, which were the handmaids of his other 2 wives. At certain times, this is really where the problem starts, is with all this. So in his old age, Jacob makes Joseph this multicolored jacket. Now, I wore this jacket on purpose, and I told Kenny that I was going to do this, but I'm probably not. But I may not ever get that back on during this sermon. But y'all see that? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But y'all look, that is plush right there. That is nice. So maybe one of these days when I have a jacket, I can have a jacket like that. So he made Joseph this jacket. A lot of people will say, well, it was a jacket that was multicolored, and you've probably seen movies, and maybe we even went to a play. What, you remember the play that we went to over in Gunnersville? Joseph and Technicolor coat, or what? Yeah, it was good. It was a good play, but it was all about the coat, and really, I'll just go ahead and tell you that it may or may not have been a multicolor. It may not have. Well, it didn't look anything like that. I don't think they had paisley back then, which is what that is. But it had sleeves. It's a very special coat, one of which would have been given to the oldest son, which was Reuben. But this was a sign, or this was kind of a signal that this person would be the person to be able to lead the family at this point, which was reserved for the oldest child, which was Reuben. So, in looking at this, we start to see already that Joseph is making these mistakes in this. Now, I'll say this. I don't want to get too much on this because I talk about this some at the end. But they're making mistakes, but God knows what's happening, and God's got a plan. And if you've read the end of Genesis, you already know that God works it out the way He wants to work it out, right? So in all this, it doesn't take away the fact that Jacob does, or Israel does, make mistakes as far as parenting. So one of the reasons here that I call this the disconnected father is because of there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, one other thing that goes on here in verse 2, it says his father's wife, talks about his father's wife. It says, and Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. So Joseph comes back, the youngest, and he tells on them. They're doing things wrong in this area. So Joseph comes back and he tells on them. Now, I don't know if any of you have a younger brother or sister. Now, is Aubrey younger than you or older? He's younger than you. So I'll go ahead and tell this if it's all right. And I handed the phone to Gina. We were at the game last night. I handed the phone to Gina, and it was a text from Charlene. And Charlene said is about a truck that I've got for sale, but which is not anything about this. But Aubrey wanted to look. She said, "My brother Aubrey here," and then she ... not an Alabama fan ... because it was during the Alabama game. That's what a little brother will do to you. And they'll come in, and I knew exactly because I knew exactly that Charlene was watching the Alabama game at the time. So she said, "He wants to talk to you about the truck." So I just took a picture where I was. I was at the game at the stadium, and I just took a picture from my seat. And I said, "This is my current situation. I can't show the truck to anybody." But anyway, little brothers and little sisters can really kind of get you in. My little brother means the striped snake. Craig knows it. Craig and Jeannie knows it. And he's not mean like that anymore, but he'll still try to aggravate. And he did that when he was little. And he was real bad about aggravating. And then by the time I punched him, Mom saw it, and I got in trouble. So this is Joseph. My brother's name is Joseph. My brother, Ricky, is named Joseph. Maybe they named him after Joseph in the Bible. But so Joseph comes back and he's got this bad report, and he tells his dad, and they've got this connection. And Jacob doesn't have this connection. And if you see later on down in this story, you're going to see Jacob send Joseph back out there. And he says, "I need you to go check on your brothers again." So he's maneuvering with the youngest child in an older child role. And he's not, to our knowledge, he has not discussed this with Reuben or any of the other kids whatsoever. So Joseph is not a very popular person within this group. As a matter of fact, verse 4 says again that his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers. So not only was it internally within this relationship that could be seen within Joseph and Jacob, but all of the other brothers saw that this was going on too. And so it was so bad, it says at the end of that, verse 4, it says, "And so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms." Now that's bad. This is a dysfunctional family when you've got this. You may have been in a situation. You may be in a situation right now to where you've got this kind of relationship with family. And it's sad that we have that relationship that way sometimes. But so that's kind of the groundwork. This is really, it begins with this disconnected father. He really doesn't know what's going on, and he's kind of leaving it up to his youngest son to be able to manage the situation, which is a mistake. So that brings us to number 2, point number 2. Point number 2 is pretty big. But point number 2 is basically what we're going to do is we're going to read down through verse 31. We're going to read this story, and then we're going to end with a couple of notes. So verse 5 says, "Then Joseph had a dream." Well, number 2, let me give you the point of number 2. It's the devious plan of the brothers. The devious plan of the brothers. So they concoct this plan. We're about to read this. "Then Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more." So that's kind of the groundwork for this next section. This dream, well, why in the world would they hate him over a dream? Well, listen to this dream. And it might aggravate me too if I was the older brother. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheep rose up and also stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheep." Then his brother said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. So not only, see, they already know that he's got this relationship with them, but now he's coming to them and he says, I'm getting these dreams that I'm going to be in. Basically, what they're taking from this conversation is, I'm in charge. Now, how would you like the youngest just to come forward, Jonathan, and say, I'm in charge? What if Kylie comes up one day and she says, okay, I'm in charge of this whole thing, this whole operation out here. I'm in charge of it. Dad's at work. Mom had to go milk cows or something, whatever, take care of the goats. And Kylie comes up and she says, this right here is about me. And see, that's what they're hearing. Now, don't ever do that, Kylie. Don't do that. But this is what they're hearing. But it's kind of innocent from Joseph because, and we see that you don't know that to begin with because you think, who is this guy Joseph? But later on, you learn that this is an innocent thing, or at least that we believe it's an innocent thing because of the way his life pans out in the end. We find out that Joseph is actually a good guy. He's actually used by God to be able to do something great. Verse 9 says, now he had another dream and related it to